I was the kid that grew up on platformers. Super Mario 64, Croc, Crash Bandicoot, Banjo-Kazooie. If the game had a jump button, you better believe I was playing it. Those worlds of colorful adventure defined my childhood, but as I started to get older, something shifted. At the same time that I loved these games, I was also discovering the Final Fantasy series for the first time in my life, and it triggered a desire in me for deeper stories, characters, and worlds. And little did I know at the time, a game was coming that would bridge the gap. Kingdom Hearts opens with characters lamenting their complacency in the same way that I was feeling. The main trio, Sora, Riku, and Kairi, want to go and explore new worlds. To do this, they build an insanely crappy raft that probably couldn't sail 15 feet, much less get to another world. The hubris is very obvious, but it's that same hubris that we all have in our younger years. They had no idea what they were getting themselves into, and yet I can't help but wonder if that same feeling wasn't also a feeling of the dev team at Squaresoft, creating such an ambitious title. Kingdom Hearts 1 is a timeless classic that has touched so many lives, and is a game that's very existence had such a slim likelihood of coming together that it's a miracle that we ended up in the timeline where it did. I say unlikely because the number of things that had to align were about as likely as the creation of life in the universe. A Square Enix executive and a Disney exec having to meet in the same elevator. The fact that Disney could not allow the explicit use of Mickey Mouse. The reason was due to a contractual obligation with Capcom on their game, Mickey's Magic Mirror, in development at the same time, prevented them from using his likeness explicitly except for only one time and only as a silhouette. The fact that Disney still let Nomura direct this game despite the fact that he wanted his persona to be Chainsaw Man. The merging of Western and Eastern animation, a mashup of Disney and Final Fantasy, a platformer that is also a command RPG. It all sounds like such an utter disaster on paper. A theoretical disaster that should not have come together to make a good game, much less one of the most influential video games of all time. One that would change Square Enix forever. But despite all of these factors, they made it come together to create the most unlikely masterpiece, Kingdom Hearts. There's not many games where I think the start menu is so worth talking about in an analysis, but Kingdom Hearts is one of them. The game immediately shows you that it aims to be higher than just a collaboration game. I think that any other collaboration game would try to cram as many iconic characters into your face as soon as humanly possible. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but what I find so interesting about Kingdom Hearts is how it deliberately does not do that. The box art for this game also deliberately does not do this. Instead, it chooses to spotlight its new original characters, only making use of Donald and Goofy, and even then it's using their designs specifically for this game. This simple but plain sight detail is what makes you take Kingdom Hearts seriously as its own thing. Booting into the game, Kingdom Hearts immediately leverages Square Enix's iconic CG studio, Visualworks, to create a stunning opening sequence that would quickly become a permanent fixture in the series. This style of symbolic visuals matched with escalating music was actually not started with Kingdom Hearts, but with Final Fantasy VIII, something that, according to FF8's director Yoshinori Kitase, that opening was almost entirely a product of Nomura. FF8's opening depicted a mix of things that were literally happening as well as symbolic and foreshadowing visuals, though it was nowhere near as abstract and metaphorical as Kingdom Hearts' opening is. I cannot stress just how much powerful visual symbolism is baked in here. The ocean seems to represent uncertainty, but also this vast growing space between Sora and his friends, especially Riku, and also this sense of darkness. And while Sora is always fighting against it, drowning, Riku stands in the center of it, comfortable, commanding it. Being lost in these waves doesn't scare Riku. In fact, it thrills him. Kairi, however, remains on land and literally grounds him, and yet even still, Sora manages to fall through the ground, while also seeing himself falling, manifesting this fear of Sora drifting apart from the friends he cares about most. And through this falling, this diving, Sora finds himself in the Station of Awakening. From the stained glass mirror designs to the weight of the music playing, the player can tangibly feel that they are about to go on an incredible adventure. It's also at this point that I must say Kingdom Hearts has some of the most iconic visuals in gaming, period, perfectly merging the manga aesthetics of Nomina's iconic character design with the style of Western Disney cartoons, something that on paper should not have worked and should looked completely mismatched, like Goku standing next to CatDog. But somehow they found the visual overlap between the style that Nomina had been perfecting since his work on titles like FF7 and 8, and an entire library of Disney films. While each Disney film, as well as each Final Fantasy, all look unique, the textures, modeling, and animation, and the overall art direction pulls off an absolute miracle and makes them feel like they all belong to the same game. And I emphasize this so strongly because people don't realize how easily this can go wrong, and how much work has to go into this. And the level to which Kingdom Hearts achieved this was absolutely unprecedented. I know this is all easy to take for granted now, and how they not only managed to blend the manga and Disney styles, they also managed to take 2D Disney characters and make them in full 3D while keeping their charm and authenticity was one of the biggest challenges and biggest miracles of this game. Sora as a character is also simply fascinating on a visual design level. His clothing is clearly reminiscent of Mickey Mouse. At the start of the game, Sora's animations can feel very cartoony, but as he gets stronger and access to more abilities, he starts to exude this Final Fantasy style coolness and confidence in his attacks. Equally as impressive as making Kingdom Hearts work on a visual level is how sublime it is on an audio level. Each Disney film has its own distinct musical identity. Aladdin and The Nightmare Before Christmas could not sound more different, yet composer Yoko Shimomura managed to weave all of them together into something cohesive. Using her trademark mix of instruments like piano, violin, and cello, she built an audio language that unifies every world under the same banner. Despite being a massive collaboration between dozens of IPs, Shimomura gave the game a sound that feels unmistakably its own. When you hear those melodies, you don't even think Disney, nor do you think Final Fantasy, you just think Kingdom Hearts. At the core of this story is the bond between Sora, Riku, and Kairi, with a huge emphasis on the rivalry and friendship of Sora and Riku. Their friendship feels incredibly real in a way that I feel resonates across cultures because almost every young boy recognizes it. They're close friends, but they're also rivals. They're homies, but they also want to be better than each other, constantly measuring their capabilities against each other. They want to be better, cooler, stronger, yet at the same time, they also crave recognition from each other, and they both want that recognition from Kairi. Now, with Riku, given how absolutely absurd the bicep definition of this supposed 15-year-old alone is, you can immediately tell two things. One, the darkness is an incredible anabolic, and two, Riku is clearly the stronger one between him and Twig Arms. Just to fight with him on Destiny Island alone will give new players a thorough challenge. All this happens before the magic and keyblades get involved too. Riku is absolutely chat-maxing throughout this entire fight, baiting Sora with taunts and his stupid kick move that can punish you for misplaced aggression. Between this fight and the race between the two of them, it is incredibly clear. These two are always in competition, and the score is always being kept, which for most first-time players will absolutely exemplify why Riku is better than you. But there's also a sense of envy in Riku, a frustration that despite his natural strength, Sora is the one that ends up becoming the Keyblade's chosen wielder. That jealousy doesn't erase his care for Sora, but it does complicate it and makes him double down on his resolution to be stronger. But it's not that Riku cares about being stronger for himself. It comes from a desire to protect people that he cares about. Riku is on a quest for strength and is willing to go to the darkest depths in order to find it. But it comes from a place of wanting to protect Sora and Kairi from forces far greater than them. The tragedy in this is that his instinct to protect through strength is what opens his heart to darkness in the first place. Riku and Sora share a similar core flaw that manifests throughout the entire series: the willingness to sacrifice for those around them at any cost, something that would make their therapist a fortune. Riku's internal struggle, I feel, is one that is deeply relatable, especially when you're younger, where that desire desire to protect others, that desire to prove yourself, can lead to some fairly destructive choices. It's why Riku's struggles never feel cartoonish, even against a backdrop of Disney characters. His jealousy and rivalry with Sora is real, but beneath that is a boy desperate to bear the weight of responsibility, even if it breaks him. Then there's Kairi. Kairi is nice. Listen, it's really easy to think this first game was light on information about her, as she would get her time to shine in other games, at least as much as Riku. Unfortunately, it seems like I will be dead enough to meet Sora in Quadratum before that actually happens. You're joined throughout this game by party members Dolan and Gooby, and genuinely, I cannot think of two better characters in the Disneyverse to be Sora's companions. Donald and Goofy are established Disney characters, and as such, they aren't really meant to see their own personal development throughout this journey, so much as to more effectively support Sora's. This being said, their friendship does develop, and it becomes one of the most endearing parts of the story. Truthfully, when they first partner up, they are not at all close. Donald and Goofy are just following orders from the king, and Sora needs a gummy ship in order to travel the worlds and look for Riku and Kairi. It's a friendship that gets built on the foundation of convenience and obedience. But after going through so many trials together, Sora, Donald, and Goofy genuinely do become friends. Of course, there are more than just the wholesome Disney characters in this game. There's also Disney villains, and they feel incredibly central to this conflict in a way I don't think they do in later KH games. The main antagonist, Ansem, isn't really at the forefront of most of the story, allowing Disney villains like Jafar and especially Maleficent to have more screen time and actually be a threat and an integral part of the story. But the coolest thing about Kingdom Hearts is that it didn't just feature Disney characters, it also featured Final Fantasy characters. For many of you, this would be the prime reason that you bought the game. Just seeing them in the commercials and the advertisements, this would push you to finally go ahead and make that purchase. Of course, in recent times, Kingdom Hearts 3 came under a lot of fire due to its minimal inclusion of these characters, and I personally couldn't say that I don't know where people are coming from, especially in Kingdom Hearts 1. Seeing that Cloud, Sephiroth, Yuffie, Squall, and other FF characters would be making appearances in Kingdom Hearts 1 with brand new PS2 graphics was a primary motivation for so many people picking up this game. What is less mentioned, I feel, is that Kingdom Hearts 1 actually only has 4 original characters: Sora, Riku, Kairi, and Ansem. Maybe 5 if you count the Xemnas boss fight in Final Mix. So this means that Kingdom Hearts 1 actually has more Final Fantasy characters than it does Kingdom Hearts original characters. For this reason, it's really hard for me to say that FF wasn't an integral part of the KH experience. It was also the first time that many of these characters were voiced. Hearing Cloud and Leon speak for the first time was a novelty that we take for granted nowadays. Aerith being voiced by Mandy Moore, kinda crazy, but incredibly cool at the time. I also think the inclusion of these characters has a far more profound purpose than just being cheap fan service cameos. The FF characters of Traverse Town are legendary and experienced Squaresoft heroes. They are the metaphorical adults in the room, so to speak, with characters like Squall, Aerith, Yuffie, and Sid, there to guide Sora and have him find his place among their pantheon, something that was an incredibly exciting part of this journey. There is a common criticism people leverage that FF characters are always different in their KH appearances. I don't think the point was for these characters to ever literally be their FF counterparts, but rather versions of those characters as they would exist as an organic part of Kingdom Hearts' universe. Squall is Leon, but he also kind of isn't. These characters would be much more appreciated when viewed as alternate universe versions rather than just their literal selves. And also a fun fact, the first time we ever see Sephiroth in his human form with one wing is actually in Kingdom Hearts 1, something that would directly influence Final Fantasy VII Remake. Speaking of influencing FF7R, there's a much more profound way in which this game did exactly that. Everything about Kingdom Hearts gameplay on paper seemed overly ambitious and perhaps incoherent. It was going to be a platformer, but also a Final Fantasy style command RPG in real time. This all seemed incredibly absurd, especially during this era of gaming and this era of Squaresoft. The life cycle of the previous generation with the PlayStation 1 and Nintendo 64 was largely experimental in how we even present a character moving around in 3D space. Nintendo were the biggest innovators here with games like Super Mario 64 and The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, in many ways defining the solutions that would become standardized throughout all third-person video games in the future. Kingdom Hearts pulls direct inspiration from both of these titles, but rather than just being derivative of them, it adds its own unique flavor. This transitional period of figuring out how characters should move in 3D space also was seen in the early life cycle of the PlayStation 2. As such, the original PlayStation 2 version of this game had players controlling the camera with the trigger buttons, freeing up the right stick to control the game's command menu. The lock-on system was inspired by Ocarina of Time's Z-targeting system, but it also featured a soft lock system indicated by a yellow icon that would guide player attacks and magics. It is incredibly easy to look back and see this camera as jank from the lens of modernity, but it was an absolute game changer for 3D action games at the time, especially in an era where most action games were using a fixed camera and not one that the player could directly control. That said, this game's camera does have one flaw that is hard to get over. The field of view in this game is way too narrow. While the FOV can change depending on the world that you're in, the camera is just way too close to Sora, like uncomfortably close. Fortunately, on PC, there is an FOV mod, but when I used it, it actually broke the tracking for the lock-on. But who needs lock-on when you can lock in? I honestly just tanked through the fact that it was broken through most of the fights because it made the game look and feel so much better. But here's the thing about KH1's supposed jankiness overall. A lot of it was growing pains to creating one of the most ambitious games of the generation in a style of platformer RPG that had never been seen before, and as such, there were bound to be birthing pains. Of course, what really made Kingdom Hearts stand out is its combat. Internally, Square had always been curious about how to adapt Final Fantasy's traditional style of combat to an action RPG, and Kingdom Hearts was one of the first bold attempts at that, and they knocked it out of the park. First of all, they nailed what I feel is the most essential thing for any action game to do. It just feels good to hit enemies. The impact against the Keyblade, the animation, the sound effects, it really feels like you're hitting something. It feels weighted and tangible. And I think that this is really important because it's the most basic combat interaction you can do, and it feels satisfying. I love that in this game, you don't even start out with a dodge roll. Instead, by fighting Riku and the other Final Fantasy kids at Destiny Island, the game wants you to master the fundamentals of reading enemy attacks, parrying with the attack button itself, and engaging in good positioning to attack the enemy. This shows the player later on when they do get dodge roll. There are more ways to handle situations than just dodge roll slop. You can also clash parry with a perfectly timed attack, and it will reward the player with tech points. Tech points are an amazing system. They reward the player for doing such things as properly deflecting an attack or targeting an enemy weakness. This encourages players to engage in more risky and experimental play, and also rewards them for handling enemies effectively. Overall, Kingdom Hearts is a game that feels really simple without managing to feel brain dead, and it's also not nearly as demanding input-wise as other action games. For example, in games like Devil May Cry, the emphasis is on style, with the player inputting complex button combinations to perform combos, and then of course memorizing those various inputs in order to chain them together. Kingdom Hearts, being a command RPG, isn't about the precision of these types of inputs. In fact, many of these commands will activate contextually just based on where Sora is in his attack cycle, or how far away the enemy is, or how long or short you chose to make your combo string via abilities. This brought back the thing that matters the most in an RPG. Things like commands, your items, what magic and summons you're using, all within an action context, something that I don't think some later Square Enix action RPGs really remembered. But one thing that makes Kingdom Hearts immediately stand out from other action RPGs is its ever-present command menu in the bottom left corner. In real time, players would have to select commands from the command menu in order to use their full array of magic, items, summons, while blocking and dodging oncoming attacks. While the game does make 3 hotkeys available for you to use, and because most players will have to equip Cure, which by the way, canonically belongs on the X button, it means that players realistically have 2 commands to shortcut. And on paper, this style of gameplay absolutely should not work, because in order to select commands while dodging, you have to grip the controller in a way that absolutely will show up on an X-ray at the doctor's appointment for arthritis in a few decades. There's also an argument that it prevents the game from being as snappy as it could be, and it might even feel what some players would describe as clunky. Yet this very idea was absolutely revolutionary, as it meant there was a way to preserve all the elements of a turn-based RPG that Squaresoft fans had come to love within a real-time action game. Not only this, but Nomura and his team would essentially craft a brand new genre of action RPG with this system that would go on to serve the core foundation of the Final Fantasy VII Remake games. Typically, action RPGs will try to get away from the command-centric nature of turn-based RPGs. I think what impresses me the most about KH is how well put together this system is on Square Enix's first major attempt at something like this. The sacrifice that some ARPGs make is to the more traditional role-playing game elements, also that the action can feel better. They don't want you selecting from a wide array of commands, as that takes the focus away from the intensity of the action. This in particular happens in later Square Enix ARPGs, where they would begin to streamline things like elemental weaknesses. It is strange to think that they never felt like those sacrifices were necessary when Kingdom Hearts nailed these systems all the way back in 2002. In fact, they realized that making an action game with all of these elements would make the game stand apart, and was a core part of the identity of a Squaresoft RPG. As such, you might think, wouldn't it have been cool if we got a Final Fantasy game that played like Kingdom Hearts? You know, like actually played like it before Final Fantasy VII Remake came along. Oh, right, they canceled it. What was also incredibly impressive for the time was AI-controlled party members. I was surprised to see how well Donald and Goofy's 2002 AI had aged, as the two actually do feel helpful and contribute to the overall damage. Equally impressive is that each Disney world would allow for a unique guest party member. The scale and ambition for something like this is just absolutely nuts. The MP system in this game is also insanely unique relative to the Kingdom Hearts games that come after it. In games like Kingdom Hearts 2 and 3, you can use all of your blue MP bar. Spells like Cure use the entire MP bar immediately, sending it into the recharge state. In KH1, MP naturally recharges from the player successfully landing hits. This means when you're low on magic, you have the option of playing aggressively to recover that magic. It also cannot be overstated just how good getting new abilities feels in this game too. Every few levels, you're constantly unlocking new abilities, and more so, many are absolute game changers. Extend your combos, add a new finisher, a new limit break. Not to mention that every few levels or major story events, there's also a new exciting ability for you and your friends to grow, including abilities like high jump and glide, which you get mid to late game, that actually make the platforming begin to feel good and precise. Kingdom Hearts 1 Final Mix, unlike its successor Kingdom Hearts games, does not have a critical mode. Instead, KH1 features an actually challenging prout mode, though the game gets quite a bit easier as you get more defensive options, and when you don't have them, especially if you sacrifice shield, things definitely will get quite rough. I was getting my cheeks absolutely brutalized by some of these bosses, especially early game. I hate Clayton so much. No you don't. No you don't. No. I wasn't able to get Leaf Bracer until level 69. Nice. Meaning that I, more often than not, died trying to heal myself. But I absolutely adore this level of challenge in the game. That is, until I realized that you could absolutely break this game in a way that not even the hardest super boss would be able to overcome. But we'll talk about that later. The user interface of Kingdom Hearts is also something I regard as genius. UI UX isn't something that a lot of games games focused on at this time, but I really do feel there's a certain charm to every menu in KH. Every menu blip and confirmation click is sharp and satisfying. While I think in modern times we think of Persona games as the apex of UI, I really do think Kingdom Hearts also co-pioneered this space. The worlds of Kingdom Hearts 1 are also something that is truly impressive. As an early PS2 game, crafting massive worlds seen in later generation games like Final Fantasy XII wasn't established know-how yet. As a result, most of the worlds in KH1 from a geometry perspective are really tiny boxes. But each one of these tiny boxes, the developers got insanely creative about how to mix up scenarios with platforming, combat encounters, and puzzle solving. And unlike most subsequent Kingdom Hearts games, magic actually interacts with the environment and can be used for solving various puzzles. This makes the game feel like it has tons of hidden little secrets. Speaking of secrets, that's another thing that makes Kingdom Hearts 1 stand out amongst the rest too. There is absolutely no handholding in this game, and as a kid, this was something that drove me insane and led me to prefer KH2's design, at least at that time. You had to be really paying attention about where to go and what to do next, with NPCs oftentimes not repeating what you were supposed to do. If you weren't fully paying attention or skipped through the dialogue, you could actually be stuck trying to find where to go and what to do next for a while. And sometimes this was really non-obvious. While this really annoyed me as a kid, I now find a deep appreciation for this. The game wants the player to engage with the level design, to be vigilant, to put together clues and solve obstacles in front of you. While, sure, the design of much of this could have been better, I can't say the overall intent of the developers didn't ultimately still shine through. The more you engage with Kingdom Hearts, the more it rewards you for it. The genius of KH1's level design was also apparent in the form of Trinity. Trinities were these little markings on the ground that would allow you to unlock a hidden secret. As the game progresses, you're able to unlock different Trinity colors. This would incentivize you to go back and re-explore previous worlds to see all the ones you missed. Furthermore, as you were able to upgrade your platforming abilities with things like high jump and glide, you were able to find more secrets throughout the world. A core fundamental part of what makes exploration in this game so much fun. Each Disney world followed a similar flow. Sora lands and asks anyone if they've seen his friends Riku or Kairi. He then becomes entangled in the locals' conflicts, fighting alongside them in order to seal that world's keyhole, while also helping to resolve the struggles of the Disney characters with plot lines that loosely follow their respective films. What could have just been shallow fan service instead became compelling, because each world echoes the larger themes that defined Kingdom Hearts: friendship, the heart, and the desire to explore outside worlds. And this is a really comforting formula. It gives you the feeling of a childhood adventure show, where each episode introduced a conflict and then wrapped up neatly by the end, yet also hinted at a greater journey ahead. It also doesn't feel too dissimilar to arriving in a town in a Final Fantasy game and then helping the locals there as well, which again brings together the Disney Squaresoft connection. And just like how you might arrive in a new Final Fantasy town, there is also a similar mechanic here in Kingdom Hearts. Directly drawing inspiration from the airship in FF games, the Gummy Ship acts as a mode of transportation for Sora between the worlds. Not only is Kingdom Hearts Final Fantasy Ocarina of Time Mario 64, it's also got Star Fox in it. While I can't say I ever personally invested a ton of time into doing Gummy Ship stuff, this is still a cool part of the game that makes you feel like you are actually going places in the Disneyverse. And I honestly could not imagine Kingdom Hearts without it. Throughout most of the game, you are carried by the rhythm of Disney adventures. Each one is colorful and mostly contained, but Hollow Bastion is something else entirely. And this is where that Squaresoft dog starts barking. The world itself feels cold and imposing, a gothic fortress of stone walls, shifting elevators, and impossible vertical climbs. Its aesthetic is equal parts beautiful and intimidating. The music is mournful yet grand and reinforces that you stepped into the heart of the conflict, into the heart of the kingdom. Hollow Bastion is not just the best in terms of music, world design, and aesthetics, it's also the best part of the entire story. It's here that Sora faces his lowest moment. Riku takes the Keyblade, the symbol of Sora's entire journey, all of his progress. The one bit of strength that he had over Riku. Riku was still ultimately able to take that from him, with him tossing you the same wooden sword that you used on Destiny Island. end. The impact of this moment is devastating. You spent hours growing stronger, building your identity as the Keyblade wielder, only to have it all ripped away from you. Donald and Goofy even abandon you. Per orders of the king, they're instructed to follow the Keyblade wielder, and since that's no longer you, they have to follow Riku. For the first time since the journey began, the game strips you of your power and forces you to feel this weakness, to feel helpless against Riku again. This helplessness manifests in gameplay too. You see, you need the Keyblade in order to attack Heartless, and since you don't have the Keyblade, you are extremely limited on how exactly you fight against the Heartless here, meaning that for the most part, you strictly have to run away from them. But the turning point comes in the Hall of Hollow Bastion. Even without the Keyblade, Sora stands up to protect his friends, refusing to back down even against overwhelming odds. That moment of selfless resolve is what shifts the Keyblade back to him. Now, you might be wondering about how the lore of this actually works, especially if you played Birth by Sleep and learned that the Keyblade does not in fact choose its master. And the answer to that is simple. The lore is that we made it the f up, and I'm sure a Kingdom Hearts PhD will explain in the comments below. But honestly, I don't care whether this makes sense in the grander scheme of the lore or not. The moment is awesome, and to me, Kingdom Hearts is more about that than anything else. But all of this, everything that has come before, as well as the events of Hollow Bastion, all set up for one of the most memorable boss fights in gaming. Riku isn't just another boss. He's a reflection of everything Sora is struggling to overcome. He is faster, stronger, and armed with a Keyblade. The battle feels personal, almost intimate, because this isn't just a test of your skill, it's a test of Sora's resolve, and a fight that I spent an absurd amount of time on as a kid, because for first-timers, this fight is brutal, exactly as it should be. But the most memorable part of this fight is what happens after. Sora making the ultimate sacrifice. In order to restore Kairi, he plunges the Keyblade into his own chest, releasing his heart and becoming a Heartless. It's one of the most shocking and powerful moments in the game, because the cheerful boy who wanted to explore new worlds is reduced to nothing but a shadow. But also you get to appreciate the Heartless walk cycle animation, and it's so funny to just watch him do that little wiggle. Ultimately, it's through Kairi's light that she's able to bring him back, and their reunion cemented the emotional weight of everything you fought for. Sora and Kairi are always willing to self-sacrifice for each other, and their hearts always find their way to one another. The game then takes us to the end of the world. This final world feels alien and terrifying. The design itself is fragmented, a collection of broken landscapes stitched together from the ruins of worlds already consumed by darkness. It doesn't feel like a place that's actually meant to exist. And that is one of my favorite JRPG tropes, where you revisit past locations, but this time they're made to feel a bit eerie and unsettling, all leading back to your home. Distorted version of Destiny Island. This is where the final showdown with Ansem takes place. The battle feels like the culmination of everything that Kingdom Hearts has been building toward. What makes the fight feel so memorable is its sheer scale. One moment you're fighting him on Destiny Island, then you're flying in the air fighting a large-scale version of him that reminds me of some of Sephiroth's transformations in FF7. This is a really cool boss fight with an incredible amount of spectacle, but it's his defeat that brings about one of the most iconic moments that video games has ever seen. Ansem believes that Kingdom Hearts is the ultimate source of darkness and therefore power. But when the doors open, one of the most magical moments in the series happen.
You're wrong. I know now, without a doubt, Kingdom Hearts is light.
Kingdom Hearts is not darkness at all, it's light. And although it's incredibly corny, it's still one of the most powerful moments in gaming. Part of this for me is that despite going on this journey and growing up in the process, Sora has maintained a sense of innocence about him that the darkness could not corrupt. And this is the foundation of the strength that allowed him to save everyone, maintaining that inner light as you are when faced with a world full of darkness. With the world restored, the door to Kingdom Hearts must be closed, and Sora, Donald, and Goofy Goofy push with all their strength. Riku, now freed from Ansem's control, helps from the other side. Now remember when I said at the beginning of this video that they could only use Mickey one time and only his silhouette due to contractual obligations? This is literally that. And to me shows the absolute genius of director Nomura. Because if you told me I could only use Mickey's silhouette, I really wouldn't know what to do with that. But despite overcoming everything, Sora is still torn away from Kairi, and their hands slip apart as the distance grows. Kairi is pulled back to Destiny Island, while Sora drifts into the unknown. This makes us recall the opening visuals where Sora is being pulled away from Kairi and Riku by different forces. It was all foreshadowing that was there at the very beginning. The music then swells with Simple and Clean if you're an English player. And I'm finally going to make an absolutely insane point I've been thinking about for at least a decade, but have not said out loud until now. So the Japanese version of Simple and Clean is called Hikari, which in English means light. This song is about how your friends are your light and always find you in a dark place. From the name to much of the lyrics, this is a perfectly fitting theme for KH. But Utada Hikaru often doesn't do direct translations for their songs, writing separate lyrics for English and Japanese. As such, Simple and Clean doesn't really have an obvious connection to the story when you think about it. Don't get me wrong, I love you, but does that mean I have to meet your father? Is kind of a funny line when none of the characters really even have parents aside from Sora, who has not contacted his mother in years. But please don't be mistaken, I still love the English version of this song, and do not think that this is actually a problem or criticism. I just think that it is really funny when you think about it. And with regards to being a theme for Kingdom Hearts, I do have a slight preference for the Japanese version because of what I mentioned. But even though you've beat the game, Kingdom Hearts is far from over. The game's super bosses should all be available to you at this point, and this is where the fun really begins. Each super boss poses its own unique challenge and forces you to utilize the game's mechanics in different ways. And with this most recent playthrough in particular, there was one challenge I knew I had to face: Sephiroth. Now as a kid, I could never beat Sephiroth in KH1. I did beat him in Kingdom Hearts 2, but he is a lot different in this first game. Just landing an attack on him is an absolute challenge. After hours of trying, I was wondering if I was doomed to never defeat KH1 proud Sephiroth. Then I realized how breakable this game actually was. With the combination of MP Rage, an ability that gives you back MP every time you get hit, Second Chance, an ability that leaves you with 1 HP if you're caught in a combo, and Leaf Bracer, an ability that gives you iframes while you're healing, I realized you could essentially be effectively immortal in this game. Then, if you combine this with the fact that limit breaks in this game make you invulnerable throughout their duration, while also dealing insane damage, with enough elixirs, you can melt through anything in this game. Let's go! Yeah, that's the power of the move. Keyblade. Let's go. This led not only to the sweet defeat of the incredibly well-moisturized Sephiroth, it also led me to clapping Xemnas' cheeks in such a generational throwdown. I don't even think there will be a Kingdom Hearts 2 in this new timeline that I just created. No, seriously, with this strategy, I was able to beat Xemnas on the very first try. Even I was surprised, like completely taken aback by the fact that I just accidentally beat him. I was expecting something on par with Sephiroth, but again, when using this very broken strategy, you can melt through literally anything in the game. Fortunately, it takes almost all the way till in-game to get there. Of course, like with any RPG, there's always going to be insanely broken in-game builds, and you only have to use what you think is appropriate with them. That being said, this build absolutely breaks Kingdom Hearts 1 Final Mix in half. By completing all the game's major content, you're awarded with a secret movie at the end of the game game that teases what's next for the series, and would serve as the AMV footage for a plethora of Linkin Park songs. Yet again, leveraging the powerhouse CG Studio visual works. This is an FMV that depicts a mysterious new character dual-wielding keyblades, which absolutely broke the minds of Kingdom Hearts fans. Not to mention these new roided-up Super Heartless, proving yet again that the darkness is indeed an anabolic. Not to mention that this Keyblade wielder was fighting what appears to be Riku, who was for some reason blindfolded in this modern looking city. This is an incredibly cool aesthetic, and you can also tell that the components of what would become Final Fantasy Versus 13 were starting to cook in Nomura's head, with this aesthetic of modern cities at nighttime, fighting up and down buildings, all while wearing black clothes. This also began the tradition of the Kingdom Hearts secret movie. By completing all the game's contents, you'd get to see an additional scene that teases the future of the series. Now, in the modern day and age, YouTube trivializes this because you can always go and look these scenes up, but YouTube wasn't founded until 2005, so for a while you actually had to do the content in order to see the movies. Although granted, because the West would not see Kingdom Hearts 1 final mix for some time, most people here wouldn't get to see the extended cut of this trailer anyways. This all being said, I think the highest praise I can ever have about this game is that I hope there's never a remake. I think that there is something inherently PS2-ish about Kingdom Hearts 1 that they could never, ever replicate in a modern game. Supposed quality of life features would only suck the soul from this title. Don't get me wrong, if they ever did do a remake of this, of course I'd be willing to give it a try, and I'm sure I'd like it. But I'm just left with the strong sentiment that you cannot recapture the magic of Kingdom Hearts 1. It's a game that should not have worked. A Disney Final Fantasy crossover, half platformer and half command RPG, and it sounds like a creative disaster in every way. Yes, you could put new graphics on it. Yes, you could pull the camera out so you could see more than just Sora's backside. Add more shortcuts and make it a modern Kingdom Hearts game. But the very spirit of this game is something that can't be recaptured. That daring ambition in 2002 to release something this bold, this daring, this unpredictable, yet phenomenal game. And so Kingdom Hearts became a timeless coming-of-age story. A game that captured the exact moment of growing up crystallized in a digital form. That is why it endures, and that is why it still resonates, and why you could never truly remake it. Kingdom Hearts 1 is and always will be the most unlikely masterpiece.